Hey everyone, it's Brandee and you're watching Abstract Crafter. So look, we're finally gonna do it. Let's build our box theater. This is just gonna be one part. We'll probably just be putting together a lot of the furniture today. If I don't directly tell you what materials I'm using, everything will be listed in the description box. At least what you can get on Amazon, including this kit. Which, as a reminder, if you didn't see the first video, we'll be doing this one right here, Roam Around in Winter. So I'm gonna move this off camera real quick. I'm zoomed in as close as I can possibly get, and as you can see, my table is very rough. Being zoomed in this close, I don't have a big workspace, which is good considering how small these pieces are. So we have our instruction book, that'll be off camera. I'll show you what steps we'll be doing. So here's our little box. We'll be starting with this, but I want to go over a few things first. Materials. More materials. Oops, we don't need this. This is the batteries. More materials. So I went ahead and I start every project this way by cutting out the things like this that you need. We'll start by putting these in, and in case you didn't see this, it says no, just bear with me because the English is horrid. There were two rabbits traveling in the winter. They walked across a bridge filled with snow. They saw a hostel with warm light in the air of this winter night. In all change in all cities and villages they have come. These become part of them. Yeah, I did a bad job. But these two things are going to get glued on the inside of here. So we'll do that. I'll see how this goes, and we may need to readjust the camera. So like I said, I start out and I cut up everything, and just, if I haven't done one of these in a while, I will, you see some of them can get very tiny. I'll write on the back of them what their part number is. Sometimes it's not necessary. I even cut out the little window slots. I didn't do it, I believe I saved one for us to do together so you can see how I do it. So we're just gonna go through. I don't normally go through the steps one by one, but in this instance I will. So let's dump all those out because we don't know which ones we're gonna need, and we'll just leave them up here. I also went through, I didn't label the wooden pieces. I usually do, but I didn't in this case. I went through it and I separated because mine had all of these little red and green things mixed in with all this stuff, so I just went through and put them in their own little baggie because you most definitely will not need all of those. So now you can get a better idea of what some of these little parts look like, and they are tiny. Alright, so I know we're gonna need some of this stuff because that's what we're gonna be working on. We'll start by putting together the tin, and this is some of the stuff we'll need. I'll be showing you the glue. I won't be gluing on the front part of it because I want to get the batteries, and if I glue it all together then I won't be able to get into that. So I also cut out all my templates and put them and stacked them with the cloth or the material that goes with them. I'll show you what I mean by that. So, in the little instruction book in the beginning, it shows you your list of materials. And this one is C2, this particular one, this cardboard, and you can tell because of the lines on it. So I just cut them out and I put them together. Sometimes I will even go as far as to just glue it on there, like maybe this way. And that way everything's already cut out and ready. I didn't do that in this instance. Most of them will have theirs together, and if not, I can always refer back. So there's that. So we'll most likely be doing today is getting things glued onto the wood, getting our tin set up, and seeing how far we can get. And hopefully we can get this done in the next couple of videos. I'm just gonna see. So this is where you can get your list of materials, and I did go through and check to make sure every one of them was here, and I do have everything except the batteries. The only thing is it doesn't tell me what kind of batteries I need, so I'm gonna email the seller and ask. And that's it. And if this had not come with English, they would email you that too. You would just, if you get this on Amazon, you just go message seller and tell them what kit you bought and tell them what you need. So all the cutouts in this particular one were in the back of the book. That doesn't always happen that way. So we're gonna literally start. See, the battery cover is what we won't be gluing down. We'll create it, but we will not glue it down. We're gonna start right here doing exactly what they tell us to do in step 1, where it's telling us to cut out these materials, glue them inside there, like it's shown right here, and we'll get this put together. We just won't have the batteries yet to actually, you know, complete that part of it, but we will need it set up for the next few steps. So I'm just trying to take a peek to see what it is that they want us to do, and I'll walk you through this and explain it as best as I possibly can. Alright, so when this isn't in view, it's going to be back, ooh, a little tin filled up, back here and out of the way. Same with all these little pieces of paper. And one thing with this particular kit, if you bought this to work alongside with me, and this book is not going to cooperate. It comes with a bunch of these, but we don't need all of these. They give you a bunch and you can decide which sentiments you want to put on yours, depending if you're doing it for yourself, if you want it to say something sweet, if it's for a birthday, then you would put that one in. If it's for a gift, like an anniversary gift, there's the I love you. If it's for a friend, you get the idea. So, alright, book, don't be compromising the tutorial now. Maybe if I put it over there. Okay, we'll just get started and see how this goes. And like I said, if I need to adjust the camera, we'll do that then. And so we're just going to be getting the shell started and getting some of the furniture pieces ready. And as far as I know, there is no other in-depth tutorials like this anywhere else. And just because I know that this is part of the next step, that I'm just going to set these two pieces out in preparation. Those pieces are, let me see, I'm trying to look here, B4 and B3 in your little book. And if you look on the instructions, B4 and B3. And you do have your sizes on there, so if you're not sure if you have a few pieces that look similar, then you would want to get out your ruler and kind of measure to see which one you need. And so let's put all this stuff out of the way and get our little tin out. I am going to back this camera up just a tiny bit for this part here. We have our post-it here just to help kind of absorb some of the light. Obviously with a tin, it's going to be bouncing quite a bit. So this will go up there, and don't worry if you don't get perfect cuts on there. Oops, that's wrong. I'm already messing it up. Goes in there. You can make adjustments if things aren't fitting tight, and then that one will go in the bottom of that tin right there. And I can see that I am just a slight bit off on a couple of my measurements, so all you have to do is take your scissors and kind of make little tiny cuts. You don't want to cut a ton off. There'll be so much going on inside there that it's not really going to make that much of a difference if you are not exact on with the walls, because you're going to have so many little tiny decorations that the last thing people are going to look at is if your paper is matching up perfectly to the walls or not. And I kind of knew cutting them out that I might be. And when you're cutting out your little cutouts, be patient and don't stress if you don't get them completely perfect. You have plenty of room for error. See, I'm still a little tight on the top. You know, and I didn't want everything to be 100% completely perfect anyway. I wanted you guys to see that it's not all that simple. A lot of the tutorials out there make it look incredibly simple, and it's not. It takes a lot of patience. I think that might be good enough. Yeah, it sits in there pretty well. I think it's kind of pinching a little bit in my bottom corner, so I'll trim a little bit more there. Sorry about that. And I am certainly not knocking any of the tutorials, because I like watching them just for what they are, to watch a speed build of a miniature. But I also knew that there was times when I wished that there would have been a little bit more instruction involved. So, because sometimes you just, you just need that little bit to show you, one little trick or tip, just to get the idea of what you're doing. And once you get that, glued in there, if you wanted to take an X-Acto and go around the edges and straighten it up even more, you could. But like I said, it's really not necessary. So, the kind of glue I like to use for this is this. It's really dirty, so you'll have to, it's a lot of glue on it. I like to use this Tombow Mono multi-liquid glue. You could use the aqua glue too. And what I do is you don't want it to wrinkle on you. So I'm probably going to not have enough of this, but I do have a backup of another kind of glue if it doesn't work. Yeah, that's pretty dried out, but it should be enough to get us through this project. I'll actually grab my backup, which is the Scotch tacky glue. And you're going to have to get your hands dirty for this. This is not a clean thing. I spend a lot of time washing my hands when I work on these. Ooh. So then you just want to, you can use a brush if you want, but I don't. I just find it can get a little tedious with a brush, and it dries into the bristles quite easily. And so you just want that nice and thin. The thinner it is, the better chances that it won't get wrinkly on you. And that's like one of the big important things when you're doing these paper crafts on these miniatures. And then after you get your layer of glue on there, you just want to let it get a little bit tacky before you actually stick it on there. And that's another step that will help prevent. And I just keep some baby wipes or some hand wipes on hand to easily wipe my fingers clean so that I'm not getting glue all over everything. And even my table. But now you see why I chose this workspace. Okay, so I got it on there. I feel like as thin as I possibly could. And then we're just going to go ahead and stick that right in there. I haven't actually used this tacky glue for this type of thing. I've only used it on furniture, so this will be a test for both of us to see. I just kind of want to make sure you get that nice and flat. You can use your fingers, or you can use a card. I don't think I have a card handy. You could even take one of the pieces of wood if you want, and just kind of, you want to make sure you don't get no air bubbles underneath there. And this is why if it's too wet, it will rip your paper when you're trying to flatten it. And so I just want to show you, you can see that my paper, I think it's going to show you, my paper is curved around the edge up there, and that's okay. So now we need to do the same thing with this. And you can glue on the tin if you want, but I find it's easier for me to do the paper so that I can get it in the grooves with my fingers, if that makes any sense. Alright, so let's rinse and repeat. And this glue comes out really fast. The one thing I do like about the Tombow is that it's got this rubbery end here that helps to spread the glue if you really don't want to use your finger, and it cleans off really easily, just like that. See, and that's why I like using my finger better, because I can control it a little bit more. And I noticed that I didn't get all the way around on the edges on that other one, so look, it even got some hair inside. So I'm just going to thin that out. And as I said, just go ahead and stick that in there. I mean, you'd have time to readjust if you don't get it exactly right, but you don't get too much time, so try and make sure you're getting that right, pretty much right where you want it. And smooth it out as best you can with your fingers. Get all the air bubbles out, the wrinkles, and again, mine wrapped up around the top. And there we go. So now we got that all ready, and I can see an air bubble right there with my, that I can't see it. But for the most part, this shouldn't wrinkle. Of course, I've never, like I said, tried this glue, but we'll see. So now we need to put together, we're going to move this because we don't need this right now. We need to put together the piece that'll sit right here in the bottom shelf. So it's those two pieces, which we will be doing for the most part in there, in here, because that'll fit right in there. But there's a little bit of prep work that we need to do with this piece, and I'm just scanning my area for my battery pack. So you got your switch and battery pack. Let's see, so now it's telling us to put the positive pole upwards and then install. And then there will be lights that go around the outside, and that will happen on the next step. That will connect also to this battery pack. So we don't want to glue the top down until we get that light hooked up. And there is like a little cutout notch. So on this piece of wood, there's a cutout notch in the middle, and then there's one off to the side. And you want that notch to be where your lights go in underneath the thing. So the way that this will set up more or less is your switch will go right inside there like that, and you'll have to glue that in, which we'll do in a second. And then this will sit inside. And then these are what will be used to connect to the other lights. So I like to use a clear drawing glue. Where did my clear glue go? Begin 3-in-1. This is my favorite for doing most of these crafts. And so what you'll do is stick a little on the inside. And this is, it has a fast tack and it dries quickly. And like I said, there's nothing clean about this. Okay, so our little on-off switch will go right in there. And you might have to hold that for a second to make sure it's flush. Mine doesn't want to sit as nicely. In this stuff, you definitely have time before it completely holds it in place and you can't move it no more without having to actually break it and then re-stick it. As far as like the wiring goes, I don't typically like to do that unless I have the batteries to be able to get them in place. So we're just going to set this down for a minute to let that kind of harden on its own. And the next step is, let me look here, where's my little papers? Underneath my tin. So while that's drying, you're going to want to take, oh, it doesn't want to get picked up, I guess. This, and this is going to sit on top here. And they want us to fold it, so you'll see right there is where that's going to go, in this back corner. So that's why you're only going to see the lake portion of it. And you can see once it's cut out, it's got a notch there, and then a line and a line. And that's your fold lines. So I like to just try as best as possible to fold on that line. There is a folding tool out there. I haven't gotten it yet, but it is, in the tutorials that I've seen it in, it is quite useful. I just use, I have straight edge pliers that I'll use, but I also have like these type of pliers that you have to force open, and they'll stay open as long as you're pinching on them. Sometimes I'll use those, but when it's as small as this, it's just, or simple folds like that, it's just as easy to go like that. And then fold the back half. Sometimes it can get tricky folding these little tiny paper crafts. And so that's all that they're asking us to do with that. And it'll just apparently sit like this. Yeah, I'm kind of looking on here to see it. I'm not going to glue it down yet, but it would sit on here. Quite yet if you glue it around it, or if it's meant to sit at an angle. It's looking to me like it's supposed to sit at an angle, and we will put this down when we get to the part that we need to put it down. But since we're just gluing all of the stuff together in this video, we won't worry about that just yet. Okay, sorry about that. I had to pause you because I had to figure out what the next part was, and I didn't want to have to try to do that while we're on. So now it wants us to glue this portion in. So it will be glued up against there, and the battery part here will be glued up against that wall. So we can go ahead and do that. And well, I won't be completely gluing the top piece on until I can figure out the battery situation. If you already have the batteries, then you want to go ahead and attach that top piece, but we can get this part ready. So the best way to do it is to run a little thin strip of glue on the bottom. Oops, better get in this is a little bit hard to show. Ooh, but I'm just getting doing the bottom and coming up a tiny bit on the corner here. I'm not going all the way up, just a tiny bit. And I'm trying to get it as close to the edge as possible. And being a little bit generous with it. And so mine is a little bit warped, if you can tell. So I'm going to have to hold that in place for a minute while the glue does its thing. And of course the wires are just stiff and they don't want to stay out of the way. And you know, once it catches and has a chance to dry, it'll hold nicely. So I'm just gonna hold that in place for a few seconds here. I'm pushing up against the tin and pushing down at the same time. So, how many of you are new to this? This is your first tin. I promise you the dollhouses are much easier. This is more of a challenge in this way. I'm actually going to take my glue here and I'm just going to put a little bead on the outside. I don't mind if it looks a teeny tiny bit messy. I'd rather it stay where it's supposed to. And this is a really good long-term glue. I only wished I had it for my very first house that I ever built. Oh, see it, and you don't want to push too hard because it had a tack, and then I went and I got a little rough with it. So just go slow. And this stuff you can just roll your fingers and it'll come right off your skin. So don't worry about getting it on you. I'm just going to try to get some of it off of that very front. I just don't want the tin to close tightly. Okay. Looks like it's in there about as good as it's going to get right now. The front part still isn't quite touching, so the trouble with that battery pack is it just wants to kind of get in the way of it. So I just hold it a few seconds longer while it takes its time to adhere. I thought it was done, but then it started moving back. So I'm going to pause you while I hold this in place and let it adhere. I'll clean it up a little bit, and then we'll come back and we'll finish constructing. So I just ended up putting a couple of clips on there so I wouldn't have to hold it. And then I went ahead and tried to get these lights. You'll get two lights. You'll have one like this that'll be used on the inside of the hotel itself. So we don't need this one yet. And they were both wrapped up with a little thin black wire that seems to have escaped me at the moment. Either way, you need that. Oh, here it is. This black wire. You will need this later on, so don't discard that. Everything is used. They just like to get creative with the way that they store them, I guess. So I'll stick him off to the side. Now this part can get a little bit tricky because these lights are wire and they don't always like to do what you tell them to do. And so now this is where you're going to make sure that this little cutout is on this side. And since I'm not gluing that in yet because I'm not putting everything inside, if you were ready to assemble everything, you would glue this in there. But we're going to see how easy it is to get these lights in there. I did my best to try to form them. And you kind of want, there's 4 of them on there. You kind of want those ones in the middle. That one on that side, and then this one on this side, ideally. And then the wire you'll continue to run down the side into the back. And I'm trying to look at the photo, and it looks to me like these are as far back as you can get them. I'm not actually going to wire everything up just yet, but so I'm going to actually pause again while I do that, and then we'll come back and see it, because it's going to be a lot of me fussing around, and that'll be kind of boring, and I want to save time for some of the other stuff. So I will be right back. Okay, it was a little bit easier than I thought. I just ran a strip of glue, and it's not going to look great. A strip of glue along the top. I let it mostly dry, and then I attached my clips. Otherwise your clips are going to get glued on there. And that's mostly just until, you know, for 10 minutes. So it's in there. So let's start assembling some other things. We'll move him. And you'll note that this is in there, but it is not. It's loose, so that I can still get in and out of there to do what I need to do before final assembly. So now it wants us to start working on this, but I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm actually going to wait and start doing some of this stuff, because once that's all put together like that, it'll be so much easier to throw everything together. And especially all these little tiny glue pieces. So we'll start with windows, and I started grabbing some of the stuff, whatever I could see. And for example, like this, one side of it is going to fold and the other side is not. So it'll be a little bit larger than the rest, but that's because one side of it is brick and the other side is wallpaper. Same with this window here. And this one. So I'm just reaching over to grab some of the stuff that we need. I'm trying to dig through my massive pile of papers. So here's one that we need to cut out. That's the other side of this one. I need to find the other side of this one and this one. That's why it's nice to label them so that when you're going through your instructions, if you cut them out like I do, it's easier to find. And I know that this one is the same. Oh, okay, so we do have everything. So you want to take your X-Acto. Mine's dark and burnt because it's had a lot of buildup of glue on it. And if you have some kind of board that you want to use as a protectant, you can. And I'm not terribly worried about my desk getting cut up. As you can see, it's already a work surface, but just for the sake of this, I will. And so, I mean, just do your best. It's not easy to cut out something as tiny as this, and I just trace along the lines as best I can. And I don't always use a lot of pressure the first time around. Sometimes I'll just use light pressure. And I try to do all my straight lines first, and then I'll go in and do the rounded parts, and I'll just go really slow with really small cuts. Again, I apologize. A herd of elephants just went down my stairs. So really small cuts, feathering it until you're comfortable cutting such small little areas out like that. Like I said, go slow and be careful. You don't want to cut yourself with these are extremely sharp, and they cut so thin that you may not even realize that you've cut yourself until you're bleeding all over your project. Trust me, it's happened more than once. All it takes is just a little slip. And there we go, we're free. Like I said, you don't have to worry because, as you can see, it's pretty rough. That's all stuff that can be taken care of later. So, the way that they are saying, just go ahead and glue one side on like that, and you're going to line up your hole as best as you can, and then you're going to turn it over and glue this side on, and then you'll wrap this piece over. And so I just need to make a little tiny snip right there to free that edge to be able to fold. And you can pre-fold it if you want. I just find it easier to fold it against. So we're gonna come back to our scotch and I put the glue right on the wood in this instance. Spread it out nice and even as best as you can. It's hard with these small crafts to get it, to get the glue spread. And you will inevitably get it all over yourself. You can just wipe it off wherever. I find I need to wash my hands pretty frequently. And you can use a repositionable glue stick if, you're not comfortable using a quick dry tacky. Sometimes, you'll have to go in and get these corners. That's where I find I have the most trouble getting them to stay down. And just go slow. And then again, you want to make sure it's nice and smooth and it adheres nicely. So I'll just rub that on there. Make sure every bit as much as possible catches. And you'll probably have some overhang, and that's something you can go in with your X-Acto if you want and just cut along the side of the wood and cut that extra paper off. I don't find that it typically gets in the way too much. You can also just smooth it over the side. And so, there we go. So now we'll turn it over and do the same thing. And I think instead of trying to do the whole thing, because this dries a lot faster than the other glue, the Tombow glue, I'll just try to do that. And then I might have to go back in with my edges. Oops, and I'm getting that all over the paper on the other side. I'll just wipe that really quickly. Oops. Look at this disaster. It's okay, it's all okay. So now this one you want to line up again as best you can, the window. And the Scotch glue doesn't give you very much time to, so you just be confident in sticking it down because you don't have that extra second or two to reposition it. Once it's down, at least with the Scotch. So then I just, usually whatever's left over on the bottle, I'll just kind of rub that there. And then you fold that little piece over to make it look like an edge. And you can just wipe off any extra fold it over, whatever it is that you want to do with it. Make sure that that's down. And so then you just want to stick it off to the side and let it dry. You're going to do the same thing with the window. And just to show you, you can do it this way too with the paper instead of putting it on the wood. If you find that the wood is drying too fast, go ahead and do the paper. But you still don't have as much reaction. Oh, well, look at that, wood is chipped. Let's just get rid of that. You still don't have as much reaction time. Once it's down, it's down. And then you run the risk with the paper of it getting like wavy. But it does work both ways. Whatever way you're most comfortable with. And I just wipe off any extra. I mean, your hands, like I said many times, you're going to get covered. And our other piece, and again I need to make a slight cut on that. A lot of these projects can take days, weeks even, depending on how much there is. This is one, since it's a lot of paper crafts, that may not take as long to get completed as some of the other ones. Especially the tiny ones. The tinier, or especially the bigger crafts. Those ones tend to be more detailed. And again, you're just gonna put a little glue there. I'm gonna try to get that more on that paper flap this time. And I'm not putting more down, I'm spreading it with the nozzle. And then just trying to use a finger that's not gluey. I'm pushing it down. This one had a little bit of extra on the other paper, so that just cleans it up a little bit. And we'll do this last one together. And then I'll show you how to assemble the fireplace, and then that will probably be it. You can go ahead and start going through all of this, because then when we come back in the next video, we'll start gluing some of these together and making some of the smaller detailed stuff. But this tutorial is just showing you some of the best ways to put some of this stuff together. And if you go step by step, you should have no problems as far as getting everything to stick down. They'll tell you every single part number that's in there. So, like this one, these first two that we did were 3 pieces, and they tell you, and that one's telling you, this sometimes can be hard, fold and stick via the broken line, which is just a dotted line. And so now this one, there's only 1 piece. So there might have been another, because it kind of looks like it should have 2 pieces, but it doesn't. It just appears that way because of the way that they show the pictures on both sides. Now, where did it go? It was right here. That's one thing with these paper crafts. Things like to run away from you quite easily. Oh, it's underneath. You guys are probably yelling at me when you... So yeah, again, this one, it's got a dotted line on it that will fold over. And I actually find that I have a little bit more time if I glue the paper. All you just, with these ones, you just make sure that you line that window up. And you can't really, some of them you'll have the opportunity where you can cut the window out after the paper's already on there. But since these ones have the windows like that already, you can't. I just find that gluing the paper first gives you a little bit more time to adjust if you don't get it on straight. And just smooth it out. The best you can. And then put the glue down and just rub it. And spread it out. And then fold it over. You can use the table. You can use your thumbnail. You can use other pieces in the kit. Whatever way you need to. So I won't make you wait another week before the next tutorial comes out. It was just, I wanted to give people time to order it. So you just want to keep going through and doing all that kind of stuff. I will come right back and show you all the stuff that I get glued. Alright, so I got most of the stuff all glued onto the pieces of wood that they go with. And this piece of paper here will tell you on some of these it can be confusing, so you just have to pay attention to these numbers. Like B17 might appear like it has 2 separate, but it's either side. And I did save a few things for us to finish off together. So I did get this window done, and this wall done, this doorway window done. I got part of the fireplace done. And when everything was dry, I did go ahead and go through and trim off with the X-Acto just to make sure everything was fine. So we will do the rugs in a moment. I thought though, and when I did go ahead and put this on there, and so this is where I would take my 3-in-1 and I would just put a little glue onto that. Maybe halfway down. You don't want to overdo it, and just spread it out. And you want to center it onto this as best as possible. Wipe my finger off. Because that's what's going to cover your battery hole. It's pretty good. Just need to straighten it. There, so now that I'll just leave that to dry. And it'll look something like that. And so the only thing I didn't trim off was like this, but it's gonna go right on to the building, so that's quite alright. Now the staircases, in the instructions it shows you that you need these two pieces, but you're only gluing this one on. It's because they stack. And I just got glue everywhere, all over me. So you want to just line them up as best as possible. And I add glue to this side. Make sure I got it right. That wouldn't be fun to try to tear apart. Not with this glue anyway. So you're just gonna put as much glue on as you're comfortable with. And stick it to your finger, like I just did. No, don't do that. Line it up as evenly as you can. And this is where you might want to get another little clamp. Once you get it all lined up. Just to make sure things don't shift on you. And there, and then you just let that sit for a few minutes. Especially if you're just building this all at once, you don't have to worry about it being long term. Same with this, I might put a clamp on it if I was assembling it all right away. Oh, try not to touch it too much as I don't want things shifting on me. So now this one, this shorter staircase, goes together with this one. And again, you just line it up. Sometimes things don't line up the way that you hope, and they can seem a little loose. And in the next video, we'll actually be assembling the whole outside and all the little tiny details for this. But I wanted to start out slow and do all this little tiny stuff, because this stuff, it can be confusing if you've never done one before. I know I spent, on my first kit, spent a lot of time going back and forth and reading instructions and making sure everything was what it said, because I was really unsure. And so I'm just double check and make sure, because at least with this glue you have a little bit more time. And then I'll put a little clamp on that, and off she goes to dry. The last thing, there's a couple more things left to assemble. This we'll put off to the side too. We don't need that today anymore. So this fireplace, this is where things can get a little tricky. So as you can see, I glued on the front piece of paper and then the back piece D15. I just centered that as best as I possibly could. I might not even be on. Then this is the next piece that goes on. And so that's where things can get a little tricky. And if your paper hangs over, that's fine. Once it dries, you can go ahead and go back over and cut it out. So you just want to stick that paper onto there. And so you might put, let's see, I'm trying to think what the best way. I'll probably put glue on here, on the back, a little just over that, where it's on the, goes over, and then also on the bottom where it's going to attach to the bottom piece. Now this isn't the glue I like using to put wood together, but I don't really like using the other glue on paper. So just do your best here. And there's no real way to clamp this, so you just gotta hope that the paper will adhere as best as possible. And then, like I said, you can go back over afterwards. See, it's a little crooked, but that's the fireplace. That's just the way it was created. And so I might have to rely on the paper more than I rely on it sticking to the actual fireplace. Let me just peek here. Yeah. So it won't, I won't have mine flush on both sides, because if I do that, then this top piece will sit sideways, and that will bother me immensely. So this is the part that's interesting, because you get this itty bitty teeny tiny shelf here. And this has to go on the mantle. And then, believe it or not, there's stuff that goes on top of that. So I'm going to take the glue I like, and I'm just going to put it on the back side of this. Just putting a little dot down and dragging it, not really trying to cover it a whole lot. Just enough to make it the least bit tacky, if you can see that on there. So then, this is why these kinds of tweezers are nice for this kind of stuff, because then you don't have to worry. And just kind of put that as best as possible. And don't forget to unclamp your tweezers. So see, there we go. There's our teeny tiny fireplace. And see, my original paper, my fireplace paper, went on crooked, so now everything else looks crooked. And it was because I cut it crooked. So there's not a lot you can do about that. Thankfully, it hides kind of in the back. So mistakes can be made very easily. Like I said, this will be something that's shown in the back. It sits toward the back of the house, so hopefully that won't be too noticeable. And then there's 3 more things I wanted to show you. So there's this itty bitty strip here. Works better with the tweezers. And I had a hard time cutting that out. And so you can see the white bit on the bottom. This is meant to wrap around what will be a balcony around the edge there. So when I have stuff like this, I do half and half. I go halfway. Oop. And that was a bit too big of a glob for me. So wipe it off and try to spread it out. And I'll just do the first 2 sides first. I don't need the tweezers for that. And since that white side was so icky, I'm going to try to put that to the bottom, because I will cut that off when it dries. Just line it up the best you can. This is where it can get a little tricky to play with these paper crafts in these tiny kits. And so then it just, there we go. And now I'll glue down the other sides. Just sometimes when you glue all the sides at once, it can be a little bit hard to get that, you know, to stick. And there we go. It's gonna look really cute when it's done. And then just the final little bit right there, and I'm just gonna use whatever's left over on the tip to kind of rub. Squeezing it gets a little bit because nothing wants to come off. Okay. And just pressing down on all those sides to make sure that it really adheres to the wood. Seeing it doesn't want to stick right there. So I'll probably take my nail and just kind of rub it. There we go. And once it dries, I'll cut off the extra little bits, because if I were to try to cut that off now, it's going to pull at the paper more than cut it. So we'll just stick this off to the side for now. And so now these wood blocks, these are essentially your floors for your first and second floors. And this one, it's hard to see, but there are perforated lines on each side, each of the 3 sides. So as long as you get that pretty well centered, using the back as your guide, it should be pretty easy. And we'll just do the same thing we did, where once we get it glued down, we'll glue the sides and fold them down. Now with something this big, I would fold first before I glue down, just because it might make things a little bit easier for centering. I just use my nail when I can, if I don't have something else, so it's a little bit folded. And then that kind of helps with the gluing. And I keep going back and forth between using the paper or the wood, I just don't even know. And this time I am going right over those edges. It'll probably dry before I can actually get to it to fold it over, but I still need to spread that as thin as possible. So then I'll take my wood and line that up the best I possibly can, making sure I go both sides and just pushing it until I can't no more. And then I'll probably put it down that way to help flatten it and fold the sides over while I still have wet glue. And if you get a little bit that dries, that's easy enough to re-glue. Before this is over, I'll probably have to re-glue things anyway. And so now there's a little tiny bit that sticks over, and since I know that that's a floor that's going to be going flush, I'll cut that paper off. Because just that little tiny bit of paper can get in the way of making it sit flush on the ground. And there we go. So that's the first floor. The second floor looks like this. And it doesn't have any folds, so this is where you have to be careful to center it as best as you can, and you're going to have some overhang. So I'll just trim that off afterwards. This one, since there's no overhang, I'll go directly onto the wood. I'm trying to use the nozzle to spread it out. It doesn't always like to work out for me like that. It usually likes me to get my fingers dirty. Alright. So I'm just going to line it up as center as I can. And try to use whatever finger I have clean to smooth it down. Just one thing to remember is keep that glue as thin as possible. Because if you don't, you're going to get wrinkles. And it won't be very smooth. So, now in the next video, which I'm hoping will be up by Sunday, we're going to do all these little tiny details, like on the balcony. I'll show you how to do that. The little tiny details that go up on this mantle. We're gonna see how, I'll show you how, come on, this gets folded, and we'll piece the floors together, because we'll build this entire thing before we ever put it inside of our tin. And hopefully we'll be able to get to some of these smaller things too. We'll just go page by page and try to get as much of this done as possible. So, look forward to that. Oh, and you'll see here one way you can prep is there's holes right there. You could take a little pin, a safety pin or a push pin, and put the holes through there, because things will go through them. We will need them. The light will go through there, right there, the wiring. I'm not sure what that hole will do. Let me take a peek and see if anything. Doesn't really look like it. I don't know why that hole is there, quite honestly. Might be a mistake, but I'll never discount anything. Okay, so, and then, like I said, we'll get this baby going in the next one, and you'll see how all this comes together, and hopefully we can finish it in at least 2 more episodes. So, my glue is so excited it's blowing bubbles. This glue though, this glue is amazing. I highly, highly recommend this one. Same with the Scotch. It is a little bit tough to work with at times, but these are the two that I found that hold the best. Besides that Tombow that I'm all out of now. I like that better than I like the Scotch, but you do what you gotta with what you have. So, I just wanted to show you before we end too, my lights are all up. There is a little bit of extra glue that's right on the edges, but it's no big deal. They're in there. And I pulled my wires out to the front like that so that we could twist them together as soon as those batteries come in. And I can show you the very, very hard and tedious. That's the worst part for me, is doing the lighting. So alright, with that, I will let you go. Have an awesome day, friends. Have fun crafting little tiny miniatures. Have fun diamond painting. Have fun doing whatever it is that makes you happy. I love you, friends, and I will see you in the next one. Ooh. Bye. Bye.